Marriage is ideally imagined as being forever bliss, but that definitely isn't always the case in reality. The first wife trope on screen often occurs when a married woman learns that her marriage was just her husband's trial run, and now he's moving on to someone else, who he often plans to treat a lot better. Being the first wife was long seen as a major loss, but in recent decades, many have started turning it into a win. Let's dig into this trope to learn more about who the first wife is on screen, how she's taking back control, and why being first might not always be such a bad thing in the end.
First Wives Club will come to order.
Starting the club was easy. Figuring out what to do next was considerably harder.
First wives on screen have historically followed a few recognizable patterns, and her characterization is often very dependent on whose perspective we're seeing her from. If we meet her early, before she gets pushed aside for the new girlfriend or wife, she's often caring and kind, but also unassuming and not terribly vibrant. Her relationship with the male character is often used as a way to indicate that he, too, is good because she sees the good in him. This is then used to create a contrast when he moves on to the next woman. We can see how he's changing, but are also meant to kind of get it because the new woman is so dazzling and exciting. Sometimes the first wife is shown to have some kind of alleged flaw that the next wife will ameliorate. These stories often don't put a lot of focus on the first wife herself, outside of using her for his character development. Often played for comedy, these women have been married numerous times, and might have even been multiple guys' first wife. They're none too bothered about divorce at this point because they know they'll just be on to the next one.
How many husbands have you had?
Mine or other women's?
Yours.
5.
5.
Yes, just the 5. Husband should be like Kleenex, soft, strong, and disposable.
If the new girlfriend or second wife is the main character, then the first wife is often made to be mean and overbearing, or sometimes outright evil. We're shown how strained her relationship is, and how miserable she makes him. This is meant to help make the guy cheating on her and leaving her behind seem not only warranted, but like a good thing. Even after their relationship is over, she can continue to appear as the nagging ex-wife that casts a shadow over the new relationship. If she died, then she can remain a perfect idealized specter that haunts the new relationship, and that all other women are compared against. But sometimes she's just used to create man pain for a male character so that he's more able to be more open and loving in his next relationship.
You made us sit down and listen to the story about how you met Mom. Yet Mom is hardly in the story.
If we're getting to see the story from her perspective, or even much better insight into how painful and traumatic being left behind can be. Whatever her emotions, sadness, rage, despair, a bit of everything, they usually stem from the issue of first wife syndrome.
I'm sorry I did nothing but be there for you every minute of every day and support you in your every move!
Whether you're running a whole household or just trying to get a handle on your own life, getting everything done and trying to take care of yourself can be so stressful. Thanks to this video's sponsor, ZocDoc, making doctor's appointments is one big thing you don't have to stress about anymore. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty. From mental health to dental health, eye care to skin care, and much more. They make it super easy. You can search by location, availability, and insurance, so you won't feel forced to make any compromises. You can read through reviews from real patients to get a feel for each doctor. And then when you find one you like, you can book them instantly. No need to call and listen to bad hold music while hoping they'll have an availability. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. Using ZocDoc has made finding and booking a doctor so much easier for me. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/thetake to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/thetake. ZocDoc.com/thetake. Marriages can end for all kinds of reasons, and it's a good thing that people in them are able to leave when they don't want to be in them anymore. But what creates such a big problem for many first wives on screen and in real life is first wife syndrome, where she, as his first spouse, was there to care for him and love him, and often essentially raise him, shaping him into a better, more successful person. But then, instead of getting to reap the rewards of all of the time and effort she's put in, he decides that now he's too good for her and wants to upgrade. Her doing the work to help him, often putting her own goals on hold to do so, was just seen as a standard part of her job as his wife. But now that things have worked out, he feels zero need to return the favor.
You wait a minute. I give you 11 years of my life and you're telling me that you're leaving me for a white woman?
It's often framed as a part of the guy upgrading his entire life. In the same way he gets a fancy new car or TV, he also upgrades his wife to match his new lifestyle. He sees his first wife as a reminder of the old him that he wants to leave behind. While he goes out and attempts to feel young again, the first wife feels, and often is, tossed aside. Though sometimes he comes to find that he vastly underestimated her and her abilities. The Stepford Wives provides a terrifying version of this that seems to be coming closer and closer to reality. The man not leaving his first wife for someone else, but forcibly upgrading his first wife into a so-called new and improved version. Cristin Milioti has played two characters that exemplify the first wife trope on screen. In The Wolf of Wall Street, she plays Jordan's first wife, Teresa, who loves him and cares for him and is there for him through his hardest times. When he's ready to give up on himself, she helps him push through, and keeps him afloat when he loses his job. The second he gets a taste of the high life, he begins cheating on her, and then leaves her for the glamorous Naomi, who better fits the idea of who he wants to be. Teresa then essentially disappears from the story altogether. In real life, Denise Lombardo, who Teresa is based on, went back to college post-divorce and became a successful real estate agent. On How I Met Your Mother, the show was ostensibly framed around main character Ted meeting her, the mother.
She's fallen in love so many times now.
Not like this. This is different.
And when she did finally show up, everyone loved her, on the show and in the audience. She was funny and kind and a great addition to the group.
Who is this person?
The bass player from the wedding band.
Oh yeah, she's great.
Love her.
Right?
But in the end, the story wasn't about meeting the mother at all. She was killed off at the last second to make room for Ted to go for Robin instead.
This is a story about how you're totally in love with Aunt Robin.
We've got a whole video breaking down this terrible ending if you want to know more. In increasingly more cases, we're thankfully getting to see things from the first wife's own perspective, where she's allowed to be a full human being with good and bad parts, with her own thoughts and dreams and her own story. Freed from just being a function of her ex-husband, we're allowed to see the full spectrum of her humanity and get to understand her better. Sometimes it takes the man leaving her for the first wife to really accept what garbage he is, and that she is actually better off without him and having to bend her life around his needs. The First Wives Club is a perfect example. We meet a group of friends who have all been left by their husbands for younger women.
You don't understand. There are only 3 ages for women in Hollywood: babe, district attorney, and driving Miss Daisy.
They certainly aren't perfect people themselves, but that's what makes the movie great. It's not really about their old relationships with their husbands, but instead them rebuilding their relationships with one another and learning to love themselves. And in this shift to focus more on the first wife's own perspective, we've also begun to see many more stories where the first wife is the one that makes the call to walk away. While being the first wife was long framed as something that happens to the wife, a result of her being left by her husband, we begin to see more and more versions of this from the other direction, where the wife is the one that chooses to leave the marriage behind. Sometimes she just realizes that this guy isn't who she wants to be with for the rest of her life. Or sometimes any guy.
We're getting married.
As in, I now pronounce you wife and wife married?
But often it's a decision that comes from finally hitting a wall after putting up with so much for so long. After suffering through neglect or cheating or full-on abuse for years and years, and eventually coming to the realization that they are the only ones actually trying to make the relationship work, these first wives decide to end things themselves and go their own ways. This generally isn't a spur-of-the-moment decision, as the man choosing to leave to upgrade to a hot new woman he met at a party the day before might be, but instead the result of a lot of thinking and planning. And yet it can still come as quite a shock to the men in these long-term marriages, where they just assumed they'd get to keep using the wife forever without having to put in any work on their end, and have their mind blown that she would actually leave after a certain point. On Mad Men, Betty had focused her entire life around getting a husband and building the perfect life, only to realize when she got everything she had been aiming for, it wasn't fulfilling, or at all what it was cracked up to be.
I always thought people saw psychiatrists when they were unhappy. And I think, are you unhappy?
Of course I'm happy.
She attempts to keep up the facade, but is incredibly unhappy. And once she finds out the extent of Don's lies, she's had enough and leaves him. And the era here is key. For a long, long time, it just wasn't possible for women to decide they wanted to leave a marriage. If divorce was even allowed, there were many stipulations that had to be met, and they were not based on the wife's happiness or personal comfort. Betty was among the first generation of women for whom it was becoming a possibility to free themselves from unhappy marriages, and even then she had a long uphill battle, and had to make the drive all the way to Reno to get the divorce done. In walkaway wife situations, being the first wife isn't necessarily a sad thing, an indication that she's been left behind, but instead a positive sign that she was able to leave the relationship and do what she wanted with her life. Divorce doesn't always have to be some huge shock or world-ending event. Sometimes two people just realize they've grown apart and don't want to be married anymore. They can actually have a better relationship once they go their separate ways and are able to just be friends, instead of having the pressure of a whole marriage and trying to remain the people they were when they got married.
You know, some parents, when they're angry, they get along much better when they don't live together. They don't fight all the time and they can become better people.
And sometimes, after a bit of separation, a couple even decides to get remarried down the road once they've worked on themselves and worked out their issues. Scenes from A Marriage and its recent remake explore this whole conundrum in flipped ways. In the original, she gets cheated on and he asks for a divorce. In the remake, she's the one that cheats and asks for the divorce. In both, the couple separate but end up finding their way back to each other in the end in a way. More able to be open and honest with each other as they finally given themselves the opportunity to figure out more about themselves. Being the first wife isn't a sentence to despair and getting written out of your own story. Instead, it's an opportunity to rewrite your own narrative. Focus on the people you really do want in your life and who really care about you, and begin chasing your own dreams.
You don't own me. Don't try to change me in any way.
That's the take. Click here to watch the video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.